When you're standing in front of a printer that promises professional-grade output, it's easy to wonder whether you're about to upgrade your workflow or just add another piece of equipment that gathers dust. I've spent the last few weeks setting up a dual extruder machine that's been marketed as a small shop workhorse, and I want to walk through what that actually feels like day to day, where the money really goes, and who should actually consider it. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the biggest hesitation most buyers have is the fear of a complex, finicky setup. Dual extruder printers have a reputation for requiring endless firmware tweaks, manual bed leveling, and a constant stream of filament jams. The Sermoon D3 Pro tries to sidestep that by combining the two hot ends into a single direct drive system, which means you only have to load one filament path and the firmware handles the coordination. In practice, that design cuts the usual tuning and hope time in half. I was able to get the machine printing within an hour of unpacking, mostly because the auto-leveling sensor did the heavy lifting and the first layer calibration screen walked me through a simple probe without any paper card tricks. The bed settled to a perfect plane, and the printer reported a level check score that stayed consistent across multiple prints. The enclosure is another point that separates a hobbyist rig from something you can trust with tougher materials. At 60 C, the chamber is warm enough to keep ABS, ASA, and even polycarbonate from warping, yet it never gets hot enough to be uncomfortable to open. I printed a small functional bracket in polycarbonate for a drone frame, and the part came out flat, with layer lines that were clean and no noticeable delamination. The built-in HEPA filter and smart door sensor also mean you can leave the door closed for long runs without worrying about fumes or accidental opens mid-print. That's a real advantage if you're using the printer in a small workshop or a home office where ventilation is limited. Speed is the headline that draws a lot of eyes. The specs claim 300 mm per second, but the real test is whether you can sustain that without sacrificing quality. On a test print of a calibration cube, I cranked the feed rate to 250 mm per second with a 0.4 mm nozzle. The printer kept up, and the surface finish was still within acceptable tolerances for functional prototypes. When I pushed it to the full 300 mm per second, I started to see ringing on sharp corners, which is a typical trade-off when you push any FDM machine to its limits. So the fast without a mess claim holds true up to a point, fast enough for most prototyping cycles, but you'll still dial back speed for detailed aesthetic parts. Dual extrusion shines when you need multicolor or soluble supports. Because the two hot ends share a single drive gear, you avoid the common issue where one extruder lags behind the other, leading to under-extrusion on one side. I printed a simple two-color lattice for a client presentation, and the color transition was clean, no blobs, no missing sections. The real kicker is the flexible release plate. After a print finished, you press a lever and the plate flexes, popping the part off without needing a scraper. That saves a few minutes per print, but more importantly, it reduces the risk of damaging delicate features when you have to pry them away. Now, who should actually buy this machine? If you're a small business that needs to churn out functional parts on a regular basis, think custom brackets, low-volume tooling, or multi-material prototypes, the D3 Pro offers a solid blend of speed, material flexibility, and reliability. The enclosure and HEPA filter make it usable in tighter spaces, and the auto-leveling removes a common barrier for less technical operators. The built-in camera also helps you monitor prints remotely, which is useful if you're juggling multiple jobs and can't stare at the machine all day. On the flip side, if your primary interest is hobbyist art prints, highly detailed figurines, or you're on a strict budget, you might look elsewhere. The D3 Pro's build volume, 290,220,300 mm, is generous, but it also pushes the price point higher than singly extruder kits that deliver comparable surface quality for purely aesthetic parts. The dual extruder system adds weight and a slightly larger footprint, so you need a stable table or a dedicated desk. Also, while the auto-leveling is reliable, it does rely on the sensor staying clean. A dust-filled chamber can cause occasional false reads, which means you'll still need to keep the enclosure wiped down regularly. A hidden trade-off that isn't on the spec sheet is the filament path geometry. Because both hot ends share a single drive, you're limited to using filaments with similar melt temperatures. I tried printing a polycarbonate support with a PLA main material, and the temperature mismatch caused the PLA to soften too early, resulting in a fuzzy interface. The machine works best when you pair materials that sit in the same temperature window, such as PLA/ABS for color work or PETG/polycarbonate for functional parts that need support. Another practical point is the software ecosystem. The printer ships with a proprietary slicer that handles